so there was a movement out
Right.
there, right? A movement called the Race Crisis Center Movement, and that helped prepare the ground for my book enormously, I know that. What did I think? I mistakenly thought, I hate to confess this, I mistakenly thought that men would take my theories seriously, you know.
Right.
They matter, well, particularly they matter in rape, because we wanted to stop rape, right?
But also you
But the
have
literary
so
men,
much
no, I-
research, I mean,
I-
so
well,
much research, you can't argue with
I
the
didn't
research.
I didn't know how many men who wrote, we're gonna try to shut out the whole women's movement as if
Right.
it didn't exist. And I found a great irony that, like the week after Against Our Bill was published, Norman Mailer, great, I'm saying not great in quotes, great Brooklyn writer, he had a dinner party at his house to introduce his literary friends to Jack Abbott. Jack Abbott was a prisoner whose release Norman Mailer had worked for, because Jack Abbott had started writing mail letters from prison. So Mailer wanted to introduce his discovery, got him out of prison, to other famous male writers. And a few weeks later, Jack Abbott killed a young waiter who was really a young theater guy in a restaurant. And, he was not over his violence. But I've always felt the irony in that, that Mailer was so quick to introduce a guy, macho guy, who's in prison, but he's going to be among us, the male writers, and then this guy killed somebody.
Because that kind of power and that kind of aggression has always been acceptable. And attractive to men.
Yes.
It's interesting now that we have this whole, backlash isn't the right word, but movement against masculinity, and raising boys. It's like, let's move away from raising them in these very masculine ways, and let's try and feminize them more.
Yeah.
And there's, of course now a real backlash about that coming a lot from a lot of conservative female writers who are saying this is madness, you can't do this to them. That to me, I would think that would be progress. Norman Mailer, I'm sure, is spinning in his grave over that.
Well, you all remember that phrase, pussy whip, right?
Pussy whipped, yes, we should be so lucky. It's a good trick, it's a good trick. I don't think that the genders are ever going to be alike, or should they ever be completely alike. I mean, there's a lot of flaws.
Well, they can't be because the biology is so different. I mean, I'm a realist about that, I feel that the biological differences are enormous between men and women. They're not just restricted to having the capacity to give birth, but that's part of it. But I think men do often act wildly, irrationally because of testosterone. I don't think it's all a cultural conditioning. I really do believe that
Some of it is
are.
chemical.
Yeah, sure.
Now,
I mean, this rise in the transgender population, every transgender person says it was a wash of hormones that I had, in my mother's womb that somehow, wired my brain differently, so I feel of a different sex, as you take that seriously.
well, what we're getting a lot now, though, and I wonder how you feel about this, because in the 70s, the idea was that rape is men rape women. Rape, men don't rape men, right?
Well, they do.
Rape is strictly a crime. I mean, I'm just pulling this out. Rape is strictly a crime of men against women. In prison, when men rape men, it is oral or anal and technically sodomy. But it is a prime reflection of the same male aggression and anger. They womanize the object. We are seeing obviously a lot has changed since this time. So much more attention paid to men being raped. I saw a statistic the other day that's like 1 out of 10 men in college will be the victim of some sort of attempted sexual assault.
Yeah, well, that's
or
1
rape.
in 10 isn't quite 1 in 4, which is what they say for women.
And
Well,
90%
yeah, but how do you
of
feel
college
about it?
grads.
Because I rear up, I think, hey, there are some men who want so much to get away from the concept that men rape women, that they are pushing the statistics on men raping men.
Ah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a page on Wikipedia called War Rape, and so I looked at it and I said, oh, they're going to be mean. Being the first one to write a history of rape and war.
Yeah.
And no, it was people trying to claim that men were just as much victims of rape and war as women were. There's an effort to deny that. I mean, I'm oversensitive to all things, and it's probably in my area. You know. But it's one thing I've noticed. That's all.
But it's also this whole idea of now there are shades of rape. As you know, I'm reading over the last couple of years, the GOP, last year in particular, talking about how there being different kinds of rape. You know, there is first-degree rape, there is marital rape. Actually, I guess they don't really believe in marital rape.
They
There's
better,
grave
it's the law
rape.
now.
Yeah.
But try to get a conviction.
Right, but, you know, and real rape, in which case if you really rape, then your body will shut. You shut that.
Oh,
shut
yeah, that guy who
shut
said
down.
that.
Yes,
Yeah,
Aiken,
we
Todd
can-
Aiken, yes.
We can forget the fringe people.
But I do.
But if you talk about a woman's right to say, I didn't want this and this was rape, that's one thing, but you know, we are dealing with the criminal justice system and the jurors, and even though the law is very clear that if you, woman, if you're drunk, that's no excuse, that doesn't give the guy, you know, the right to rape you and get away with it.
Right.
You know? Nor does his being drunk give him the right to get away with it. The law is clear on that matter, but juries aren't, and also prosecutors aren't, and they would do anything not to take a case, not to bring it. I mean, first of all, on the level of police, they don't want to make the arrest, and then you get to the prosecutor's office and they say, hey, we want winning cases here, we don't want to have straight losing cases. So they don't prosecute. So that's the big difference, one of the differences. Did anyone read Ariel Levy's piece on Steuben Mill in the New Yorker? I know it's like, it was just one thing, so, you know.
What was it called?
Well, she did a piece on the Steuben Mill rape.
Oh, the Steubenville rape, yes.
Yeah, which was a perfect example, it seems. Many people like, hey, this is rape culture. You know, you have a football team and they're macho. You also have women who want to be the girlfriend of a football star.
Yeah.
So she brought up facts that made me uncomfortable, but I don't doubt that they were true.
What did she
That
say?
the victim, well, she found information that the young victim, she ended up being, you know, and it was also photographed by 3 guys.
Which to me is just insane that people are
Yeah.
photographing this. And you talk about treating a woman like
Right.
nothing, like she's just a piece of meat.
But she had, and the chief guy who assaulted her had been texting for a couple months before that, and she wanted, this is what Ariel Levy said, she wanted very much to have a relationship with him. And if the price was to go like that and be abused by him and his friends, you know, Ariel Levy said, I don't know, I wasn't there and I didn't cover this case, but she looked over and she said, well, you know, this kind of is like a shade here of something, right?
Yes.
Right? It does make a difference. So I just can't deny that somebody I know, and a writer I respect, wrote this. You know, in the New Yorker, I sort of wanted to say, Eric, I wish you hadn't,
Yeah.
you know, but she did. She did write that. Some cases are ambiguous. Yeah, and I think as feminists, we should never deny it.
Right.
Never deny it.
Which I think that we get into people, there is definitely a lot of fractiousness in that case. I'm trying to remember an interview that you did where a woman had come out years later and said, you know, I had said that I was raped, but I wasn't actually raped. And I absolved him and they released him. And you made the very good point that as she had become a born-again Christian, that she just really didn't want this to have happened. And that she wanted it perhaps in some way to simply be over.
There's a huge pressure on women to show forgiveness. Well, there's a whole forgiveness movement, you know, out there. But when I've seen, you know, it's very touching when people appear in court and say, okay, he killed my child, but I forgive him. You know, it's sort of a Christian virtue.
But do you think that some of that too is if it kind of plays into that whole, or at least in the case I'm thinking about, if you behave in a certain way, if you forgive, this is much less likely to happen to you again. Like if you follow the rules, and that's not a good way of putting it.
Well, I don't know, it wouldn't spring to my mind first, but I was thinking about juries that don't convict rapists, you know, because it ends up like there's a 2% conviction rate, and the rest of them all, you know, they go free. It's the worst. Rape is, you know, the big four violent crime are rape, murder, armed assault, battery, and rape. And the conviction record on rape, it just doesn't match the conviction record on any of the other crimes. And there are juries making these decisions, and I think it's women on a jury who are thinking to themselves, this could never happen to me, therefore I can't believe that it happened to her.
Right.
You know, I think that's what's still happening.
And they're blaming them because they think, well, you weren't very smart,
Yeah.
you wore that skirt, you went out. you
Well,
did
all
X,
right,
Y.
now here, I'm going to say something.
Good. Bring it, yeah.
Very funny. I have my differences with the slutmarch women, you know, the women who trying to organize against rape in the last few years. We're holding marches around, I think it started in Toronto.
Oh, yeah, I went to one in Portland where a lot of the sex workers and young women marched topless or nude,
Yeah.
which was quite something.
Well, that's okay, you can say you thought it was terrific.
No, I'm saying I thought it was quite something. It's complicated.
I think it's very complicated.
I
Because, yes, well, let's say it, because women are claiming, and rightly so, that how they were dressed was not, you know, an enticement to the men who happened to see them to rape. But the truth is that men do see these as cues.
absolutely.
Yeah, so the idea of in the Muslim world today that listen, you don't want to be raped, so you just cover yourself, right? You just cover yourself completely, and then you are not worried about it. Yeah, so that's on the other side. I mean, you can't live if you're a woman either way, either way, either way.
Yeah.
Can I throw in one point about?
Throw in whatever you
yeah.
want, please.
No, I just wanted to say that the problem, one of the problems of being an aging feminist, is that you can walk on the street now, and nobody is going to catcall.
Well, if they know who you are,
No,
they might very
they're
well
not.
have some words for
They're
you.
not going to make the sounds. You know, they're not going to say something provocative, and this could lead you mistakenly to think that women aren't subject to street harassment anymore. isn't that terrible, but it's true. I mean, I notice it when I'm walking near a younger woman and they harass her, you know, but they're not harassing me because, you know, it's like, you know, in the old days they used to say, hubba, hubba, hubba. Like, you don't say that. Somebody looks like me.
You miss it, you're nostalgic for the hubba hubba days?
No, I just thought it was like the earliest sign of what was then socially sanctioned, and, you know, it's not socially sanctioned anymore. But if you lived in the 50s, the phrase hubba hubba was socially sanctioned. Yeah.
And certainly reading about the history of rape, it's not simply the hubba hubba demographic that's getting raped.
No.
It's the children, it's the
Big
village women.
demographic, the
Yeah.
children.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
who are.
But, you know, it's rape. The police can be, you're in a bar and you're talking to another guy, and then it's time you go home. He says, hey, well, you going to take public transportation? I can drive you. And,
Right.
you know, that's nice. And then he rapes. You're.
I find
Now,
this
is
whole,
that-
they call it date rape.
is
It's like,
that-
that's not a date.
no, that's not a
actually.
date.
Yeah.
But that's the problem. If they had any prior exchange, like a conversation in the bar,
Right.
it's now called acquaintance rape, and that skews the statistics.
Right,
That to me is a stranger rape.
right.
Yeah? She made a mistake, but she wanted to ride home. You know?
And that's a very good,
Yeah.
it's a very good point, because I think once you start putting acquaintance rape or date rape in front of something, it kind of takes the teeth out of it. It makes it seem less horrible.
Well, something else happened. I mean, it was fine when suddenly date rape was being talked about a lot. But where did the conversation go? It went to, oh, these drinks that they're putting their, you know, drugs in. Yeah, and that's not the problem for being on a date for the most part. And all of a sudden he thinks, you know, that it is his right and his legitimate mission to force you to have sex. So the whole concentration there for a while became, be careful, don't, you know, watch your drink, don't let anybody put a date rape drug in your drink. Really awfully minor. Compared to what is still the main problem is what are people's expectations on a date. And also, when are you going to say, you know what, I really think I'm best go home. It is unrealistic to say that when you're already in bed and you don't like the way the sex is going.
Well, this is also.
I mean, it's unrealistic.
Bad sex is not rape. Also,
Right.
you know, I
That's
mean, that's
right.
when we get into the whole Katie Royke thing, which is a whole other conversation.
Well, you can have that
No, we
conversation.
won't have it now, no. But that idea too, like with withdrawal rape, like how do you know, how can you withdraw yourself from that situation and still call it rape? How can you stop it? I mean, that's a problem now in prosecuting rapes.
There are huge problems. You know, it's funny because when I went to college, there were very strict rules against not going to the man's apartment or his dormitory room. And really was rubbed into us that if we should go, which we shouldn't, but if we did, we should keep standing.
And it helps if you glue your knees together.
Yeah.
Or carry a gun.
And I just sure I've never done this.
70, 71, because one of the big things when I met my husband.
Mention of it was in a West Coast newspaper. There were so many women's newspapers, and they kind of just sprung up. You know, it's called It Ain't Me Day. And a woman had been going to her first feminist meeting in Berkeley, and she hitchhiked and got raped and told the Women's Center. She said, well, you know, I didn't get there tonight because I was raped by a guy in a truck. and they interviewed her and it appeared in their newspaper, and that had been 1970. I mean, I had it, you know.
I don't like to feel that I'm that precocious.
There were people who understood rape intuitively, but they didn't have a loud voice in a culture. So I'm glad to hear you were precocious. You know, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. But as I feel with anything, it takes a movement. You know, like gay marriage, which, what? You know, who thought of that before people decided to make it their political movement?
Wasn't that one of the big cases that where, it's something else that you were able to accomplish, which was to change the criminal justice system, which was to say, you no longer have to, you used to have a witness, right? An outside corroborating
Yes.
witness for the rape.
Yes.
And forensic evidence in addition. And
Yeah.
this made it so that you could just have the forensic evidence and the victim's past sexual relationships couldn't be brought up
Right.
at trial. I
Right.
think it came out of that.
Absolutely, we won those.
Yeah, which was
Yeah.
a huge thing.
Yes, but failing, of course, to understand that the internet would be out there in a decade, and they do all the stuff about her prior chastity, her reputation in the community, they name her name. Yeah, so ultimately, yeah, they're always one step ahead. Yeah.
And it's a painting. I mean, somebody painted a rape.
And made it look very attractive.
Right, but I mean, this is
I
something
mean, the
that's
men are
existed,
carting off these women who all have, you know, they're built.
and they're not screaming.
No,
They're not.
Very elegant.
No, it's like something out of mythology. Women are always being carried out. And think about like the robber brides, you know, that was just kind of part
Yes.
of what happened. You'd go into a community and you'd steal the women you want, and you would rape the women you want, and then they're your possession.
Yeah. But, you know, some feminist artists started to talk about the male gaze and that what, you know, we're seeing is the male interpretation. So imagine what they've had to go through when they start to point out the sexism in so much early revered art by the masters, you know? Who's gonna let them get away with that?
And before I ask my question, I'll say, and how much does this culture encourage or at least approve of the idea that artists can have sexual relationships with their models freely without considering those models subordinates who in another setting in the society now, this would be considered sexual harassment to take advantage of any subordinate's poverty.
Oh, yes,
absolutely.
But I think in the art world, the literary world, the photography world, it's always just been like, well, you know, we feed these, even if they're great artists, we just feed them to these men because this is what they need to survive. Either you're the art wife or you're the
It's
muse.
glorified.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I'm his muse.
Right.
Young women are always looking
But
for their
then,
identity.
yeah, but
through
you know,
men.
if women continue to want to fill those roles, so what do? Pull them away physically? You know, I read recently about a wife of a famous Brooklyn author. It was interviewed and she said, I grew up wanting to be a writer's wife.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Well, they need some education. But anyway, I wanted to ask you too, if you had by any chance heard Erica Jong on NPR with her daughter some months ago.
no,
No?
what'd she say?
It was
15 years.
unbelieving. I thought there was going to be a fist fight. Erica Jong and her daughter were on NPR, and I'm not 100% sure. I think maybe the monitor was Leonard Lopate.
Sounds right.
Yes, that would be.
And her daughter referred to Fear of Flying as a dirty book.
As a what book?
A dirty book. Oh, Mom, you wrote Fear of Flying. It was a dirty book. That's all it was, a dirty book. And of course,
Molly
She
said
read
that, isn't her name Molly?
her daughter, I don't remember her name.
Yeah.
And of course, Erica was very upset. And her daughter actually said on the air that the only thing feminism was about was so that young women could have sex before marriage without being vilified. And I thought Leonard, and both Leonard, if it was Leonard, and Erica were gonna come apart at the seams, you know.
I'm shocked.
I was too. Everybody, everybody was. And I'm sure there were people who heard that and thought, well, Erica couldn't have been a very good mother if her daughter feels this way. But, you know, because women always get blamed for everything.
Right.
But I spent a summer in the United Kingdom 3 years ago, and I see what, you know, young girls are reading on the subways and in the doctor's offices. You pick up the magazines and you look at them. And, you know, I said, oh, I know I've entered Fogieville, even though I grew up in the age of short skirts and the pill and all that, during a time when if you turned a man down, he said, you have no excuse because you can take the pill.
Right.
Right? I spent a summer in Britain, and it was appalling to me. I would see 18, 19, 20-year-old women dressed at 1 o'clock in the afternoon like they were going on a very hot date. I mean, the stilettos were unbelievable, a short skirt down to there with the dress, eyelashes that looked like they got them from the Fuller Brush man. And this is a work day. And I spent 6 days in Oxford, right? I saw one woman the whole time, young woman, a college student, the whole time I was there that I noticed that had on jeans and a, t-shirt and sensible shoes. And it seemed like even the women in Oxford, who were the best and the brightest, right? Job one was be attractive to men. And when I see what's in young women's magazines and the media now, and I guess maybe it started with Cosmopolitan, I don't know, but I can't believe how much of that content is about your relationship with a man and how much of that hinges on bed. And I think a lot of women are getting the idea that this is the most important thing in their lives. And just a few months ago, I think it was in More magazine, which tries to appeal to women who are 30, 40, 50, a woman finally wrote an article in there who said, I have had so much sex with so many people for such flimsy reasons, my head is spinning.
Do we have time for one more?
Time for one or two more questions.
Can you please speak about rape in the military in the U.S.?
That's a great question. That's really
Easily
it's
great.
in the news so much right now. That's a necessity.
Yeah, all right, thank you, Grace. I think that the Gillibrand bill should have won, not the Claire McCaskill bill. But you will notice that in recent years, and it was a terrific documentary too, it has been exposed that women are less safe. Put it another way, they're more safe in combat situations than they are just in camps, including camps in the U.S., basic training camps, and where they're assigned in war zones. Because so many soldiers are just acting like, men without morals, and they probably don't like the idea of women in the military. Anyway, a lot of women are getting raped in the military, and they don't get justice through the chain of command, because often they are raped by somebody in the chain of command above them, and also the people judging that are men further up in the chain of command.
And within the military.
Within the military, we're talking. Yes, but the Gillibrand bill was designed to take it out of the chain of command, because obviously these higher-ups are going to exonerate